wars and rumors of wars.
Russia, Russia, Russia.
Fight for Ukraine. New world order.
New
Real
world
quick.
order. It's just a
Real quick,
conspiracy
I gotta
theory,
let
yeah?
this. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, real quick. I gotta go let this cat out. Excuse me.
Okay.
So sorry. You can continue. I just didn't want you to talk to me while I'm gone.
Okay. All right. You shall leave. All right. Okay. New world order. All right. We've often heard about how it's just a conspiracy theory. It's not real. But in recent months and years, it seems like there has been an attempt to define the phrase. I feel like we're at another point in time where the mainstream media is doing that. This is the Guardian.co.uk, and the headline here: War in Ukraine defining new world order, says think tank. A think tank talking about a new world order. It's actually not new if you're in the realm of conspiracies and looking at stuff. They've been publishing stuff like this for a long time, but it's just another example. You know, maybe people are new to the idea of, hey, maybe these big world institutions don't have our best interest in mind. It says here, almost a year after Russia's war against Ukraine started, it has united the West, according to a 15-country survey, but exposed a wide gulf with the rest of the world that is defining the contours of a future global order. The study by the European Council on Foreign Relations, there it is, ECFR think tank, surveyed opinions in 9 EU member states. Just remember 9. Pop up again in a little bit here. Including France, Germany, and Poland, and in Britain and the US, as well as China, Russia, India, and Turkey. It revealed sharp geographical differences in attitudes to the war, democracy, and the global balance of power, the author said, suggesting Russia's aggression may be a historic turning point marking the emergence of a post-Western world order. Again, we've been talking about some of this stuff for a couple years at least, you know, this whole idea of a new world order, the old new world order breaking down and, you know, creating a new world order. Quote, the paradox of the Ukraine war is that the West is both more united, remember Joe Biden talking about how they're more united, and less influential in the world than ever before, said Mark Leonard, the think tank's director and a co-author of the report based on polling carried out last month. So the think tank, the European Council on Foreign Relations, did a study and they discovered, yeah, you know, the West is more united. The NATO force is more united, as Joe Biden was ranting about in his speech in Poland, but they're less influential in the world and weaker than ever, which is, I think, where all of this is headed, by the way. And we didn't bring it to the show, but there was a Marjorie Taylor Greene tweet thread that talked about, basically a civil divorce within the blue states and red states. And it's basically the balkanization of the United States that we've talked about before. And now, you know, Marjorie Taylor Greene calling for it. All right, I'm going to skip a little bit in this article and get to some other points here. However, it had, quote, utterly failed to persuade major powers of the rest, such as China, India, and Turkey. Okay, we probably maybe want to read that paragraph before. Yes, the study was extremely sobering. The survey showed the war had given the transatlantic West unity and purpose, he said. However, it had utterly failed to persuade major powers of the rest, such as China, India, and Turkey. The lesson was clear, quote, we urgently need a new narrative that is actually persuasive to countries like India and the world's largest democracy. So in the context here, they're talking about China, India, and Turkey, but I think it can apply to any nation here, but mainly they're going to be against China. So I don't know that China is a part of this conversation, but looking at India and Turkey being a place where, hey, they're out there, they're not exactly, you know, with China or with Russia in the war efforts, but they're definitely trying to do their own thing. And it leans into this idea of a multipolar world order we've been talking about, and perhaps India, places like Turkey, becoming their own sort of pillar. Okay, skipping down a little bit. You get over there, you got your situation taken care of, Basil?
Situated.
I don't know if your mic is on. Okay. Compared with similar
sorry, I
poll
had
last
you muted.
summer. Oh, yep. You were muted. So, yeah, you're good?
Good.
Okay, good. All right. Okay, compared with a similar poll last summer, moreover, Russia's war against Ukraine was now seen by more people in the Western alliance as a fight for democracy and their own security, and as a war not just in, but on Europe, ECFR said. Which is, again, interesting that Joe would be the European savior. All right, some numbers, more numbers. Talks about how China, India, and Turkey don't agree with that sentiment. The majority of them, 76% from China, 77% from India, 73% from Turkey. They actually see Russia as being stronger now than before the war. So they're not, fully in line with them, but they're sort of butting up with what Russia is doing and I guess agreeing with the idea that the West is weakening, the United States is weakening. And if you look at some of the supply chains taking place, the unification of the supply chains in the East, in Russia and China, and not using the dollar to settle on oil and things like that all around the world, you can tell the United States is losing its influence, at least in the economic order sense.
Yeah, you got to keep in mind, too, that those people are subject to their countries' propaganda as well.
Of course. I
don't know if one or the other narrative is necessarily as true as anybody believes.
Well, that's the thing. Every nation gets to sort of propagandize their own people, and they have their own thing. But, of course, with Russia and China, they have large populations, so they have more influence. Okay, so the end of the article here. The West will have to live, they said, with hostile dictatorships such as China and Russia, but also with independent powers such as India and Turkey. These do not represent some third bloc or even share a common ideology, but nor are they, quote, content to adjust to the whims and plans of the superpowers. Rather than expecting them to support, quote, Western efforts to defend the fading post-Cold War order, we need to be ready to partner with them in building a new one. And again, interesting that there's sort of, we talked about the idea of World War III maybe a year ago and how it's kind of like you go on the playground, you pick teams, kind of like the NBA All-Star game recently. A couple of captains, they each pick players one at a time, and the teams are decided. And the way things are looking, it looks like it's not going to be just one or the other. But in the context of this New World Order, this Ukraine conflict being the catalyst for reshuffling of all of the world orders, I wanted to bring this clip to you from Uri Geller. He's the British-Israeli psychic medium guy. Because also, part of the Guardian thing here that's interesting, Israel is not mentioned as one of the nations that was surveyed, which I thought was interesting. And they have, we heard about Ukraine and the U.S. begging Israel for some technology to defend against Russia for Ukraine. But there's a clip here from Uri Geller. Uri Geller, the spoon bender. He's the guy who hung out with Gene Roddenberry, who wrote Star Trek, and also was part of the guy who were not part of the seances that contacted the Council of Nine. And he had a really interesting message here about the war, the whole situation, especially to Putin, and a request to the public.
Hi, my dear friends. Please look at the photo behind me carefully. That's me with Vice President Al Gore, Yuli M. Vorontsov, who was the first deputy foreign minister of the Soviet Union and was responsible for the arms reduction nuclear treaty, Anthony Lake, then the National Security Advisor, later the head of the CIA, Senator Clayton Pell, chairman of the U.S. Senate and Foreign Relations Committee. And I must tell you that they asked me to bombard Yuli Vorontsov, the Russian, with telepathy to sign the nuclear arms reduction treaty. They did. Today, Putin announced with that photo that his finger is back on the nuclear bomb. I need your help every day, 11:11 a.m. Israel time and 11:11 p.m. Israel time. I need you to focus with me for a few seconds to get Putin off the nuclear bomb.
So what he's talking about there is in 1987, he was asked to attend a U.S.-Soviet nuclear talk in Geneva, and his task, according to him, was to telepathically convince the Soviets to agree to cut nuclear arms. And then within a day, they signed the thing. So he's sort of rehashing that old trick. I don't know if he's being officially asked to do it again. I wouldn't be surprised if he was, but it's interesting that it's just sort of kind of a spiritual warfare type of thing. I know it's a new age occult guy, but I don't know. It's a very interesting development.
The U.S. especially has a long history, as well as the U.K., the West in general, has a long history of implementing Western occultism into geopolitical affairs.
Yeah,
I mean, that's one thing that we and other occultists can agree on is that governments of the West have often implemented quietly the help of famous occultists. Of course, during World War II, you've got Aleister Crowley and the skin drums. You've got
Jack Parsons is part of
Jack Parsons, exactly.
The origins of NASA.
Mm-hmm. You see him all over the place, and I believe him. I don't really have a reason not to believe him, except for he very easily could just be making it up for economic reasons, and that's totally possible too. I would not be surprised either way. But this would not surprise me at all if somebody, it might not be officially paid for by the Pentagon or something, but they probably wouldn't have to. I'm sure he'd take on the honor of being the West's occult operator during times as this.
Yeah, and
so
another one to mention, Benjamin Creme, well talked about in the early days, Chris White, Age of Deceit type of era. Benjamin Creme was part of the United Nations and is considered this prophet guy who basically said that Maitreya, the world savior, is here, and we're just waiting for Maitreya to make a public appearance. And they had a whole section of the United Nations headquarters dedicated to his rituals and stuff like that. So yes, there's a huge long history with all this stuff. And, you and I might be a little jaded about it, but there might be some new people and they don't know all the history and why it's, we say the things we do.
Yeah,
so yeah,
sure.
There you go.